Yeah, so thank you once more. Like you said, my name is Eric Akumiah. I currently work for Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams. First, as the Africa Regional Liaison. But I was first born and bred in NCS. That's my origin. So I agreed to be part of a team that will document the things that NCS did. You know, in this part of the world, sometimes documentation is a challenge. And so we are trying to put together a book, but these are just snippets of what we have in. So it's a story of NCS. How did it start? What are some of the things they did? And it's like the sunrise and the sunset of NCS. Something happened and there was a shutdown. So that's what I'm going to go through.
Should be facing up now.
Yeah, I like to even do some rubber do downstairs. That's okay. Yeah. All right. So in this presentation, I'm going to just look at the background and you know, the visionary, the person who thought about all these things that happened, and just a brief introduction. Who is he, what he studied, where he worked, and then I'll come to how NCS was actually founded, and then some of the technical things, the technology drives that NCS started doing, and then look at when the internet arrived, subscriptions, how it came, how it grew over a period. Then we had introduction, vision, see some of the internet Ghana and Africa Online. Is the internet. So, and then look at the things that enabled us to be able to do all this. And of course, Honorable Pepra has already been acknowledged as being very critical. I mean, this was a time when, you know, reforms were taking place. 96, we had the NCA being established and so forth. So we predate all these things. And, you know, being an incumbent, once the laws, it becomes, you know, kind of, and then we'll look at the shutdown quickly and some few recognition. All right, so Prof, I think we've heard about Prof. We know the father of the internet. We actually acknowledge him for all the things. AFTLD, I used to be the first admin manager for AFTLD. He set it up with Young Cook, right? You know, and so forth. He's done a lot on the continent, we all know. But Prof was the first, one of the first people to have a PhD on the continent. That's arguable. I don't know if there's somebody sitting, but we know that he was the first. Come again? Computer science, sorry. Yeah, first PhD in computer science. Okay, and he did his education in Dartmouth, Stony Stone Brook, where he did his master's, etc., etc. And he worked over a period from 1977 to 1992 as a senior engineering manager for Digital Equipment Corporation. That was one of the leading corporations when it comes to the, technology. Because, you know, those things, and I must say, he acquired about 4 patents for high processor, you know, computing. Those were the days when NASA used to use deck equipment to monitor space travels, and most of the critical train stations were using, we call it a fault-tolerant system, VAX, FT systems, which technically doesn't fail. They have more than one processor. One fails, the other is up, and so forth and so on. It came to a time when Compact bought DEC, and people were looking for these systems. I recall people even came to Ghana looking for the DEC systems just because it was such a good system. So that's Prof's working in the US, but let's go on. All right, so Prof came first to Ghana in 1979, and essentially on his mind, he wanted to establish a computer science department at UCC, because at that time, computing was not being offered as a course. It was just, the mathematics department, statistics, were offering it. So one of the things that he wanted to come back to do was to actually set up the computer science, which he did. And some of the students who graduated from that is Dr. Abdullah Isani. I don't know if he's here. And a few of those guys, they were the first batch of trainees from UCC Computer Science. And of course, I think he has described what was happening at that time. I don't need to go in too much, but those days we had huge mainframes, and programming was typically COBOL and so forth and so on. So in 1988, Prof came back the second time because there were challenges. So after I think a 3 or 4 year span, he had to go back, and then came what I call the second coming. And for this second coming, he had a two-pronged approach. One, to establish a company that will develop technology, and to also empower academia by training more computer science guys. And so that's the second coming. So he had partnership with DEC to represent DEC. We call them digital, equipment. So most of those computers that we used to represent as NCS was from digital equipment. And the vision, like I said, was to build capacity as well as introduce growth. So I think I will just stop of this. So NCS did a couple of things, yes. One of them was set up, arguably one of the first wide area networks for DRA, GMPC, and connecting from the NCS office. In those days, computing, like we said, was more of mainframe, but data communication and transmission was virtually non-existent. So using the DEC systems, we're able to connect and help build campus networks using digital equipment corporation, protocols. TCP/IP was not really. It was now emerging, so we're still researching. Not until when they referred to ISOC, or Internet Society trainings that started after 1992. So most of the team that was with NCS went for those trainings. And one other thing was that we hosted an ICTP processor workshop, and those just to build the capacity and expand the base of engineers within the system. So come 1995, through some engineering and other things, we managed to bring the internet to Ghana. It was a collaboration between NCS, Hypex UK, Ghana Telecom, and British Telecom. So like Alain said, in the beginning, we're using units copy protocol. So we dial into the system. If it's news feed, we bring it, we distribute it. And that was how it was going. But in August 1995, we managed to have a connection using a lease line through Kuntunsi all over to the UK, British Telecom, and to Hypex, which was our upstream ISP. So Hypex connected NCS to the global internet. And that's how we're able to send and receive things. And it gave us the opportunity now to be able to actually browse the internet as we know it today. But I recall it was a 9.6 kbpx. I mean, it's laughable because that's just, and we're paying, I think, $7,000 for that. But that's the beginning. You know, nobody else was doing it around here. So that's how it happened. We also hosted the first website. We helped a couple of countries to also connect. Liberia, Gambia, host of them. Sierra Leone, we did things for about, even Nigeria, we had some companies that we actually sent engineers to help them build systems and so forth and so on. So how did our subscriber, I mean, in the beginning, we didn't have any subscribers. And I recall I was put on the marketing team, so of course an engineer. The proprietor himself is an example of people who, you know. So we had to go out and sell this new product to people and to tell them this new thing, amazing thing that can really, in seconds, be able to allow you to send your mail rather than going to the post. You know, it was an uphill task. But gradually, people began to see the need. So we began to have a couple of corporates who really needed to communicate to their superiors in other countries. And then gradually, these numbers increased. So by March 1996, we had grown the subscription from 0 in January. Of course, it was in August that we had the connectivity. So within that short period, we had 323, and mostly corporates, and we had a few people who were also individual, but mining firms, they really needed to connect with their, principals, media houses came on board, and government departments, and so forth and so on. So we've talked about how we're connecting, dial-up point to point. So we used to have a rack of modems in our office. And so if you subscribe, you use your modems. These days, we don't hear that people, sorry. For those of us who know, you know, so you connect. And once you connect, you can now be given access through the telco, which was providing the connection until we got approval to put up the first dish, which gave us opportunity to do a much bigger 14.4, you know, and from then we started increasing the capacity of our link, you know. So that is how it began. We also tried to decentralize, so we got banks of modems in other cities, Kumasi, Takoradi, Wa, so people will not have to dial all into Accra. Those days, the copper had problems, and so, but, you know, Ghana Telecom was trying to improve. So the more lines we got, and we got people, POPs in the other cities, the less pressure it was on the Accra bit. So come between 1996, competition came into the market. The first uptakers, Internet Ghana, Africa Online, came with very aggressive marketing and, sales drives. And so in town, it's like, they're coming to kill NCS, and of course, it was good for the market because it actually helped us to fund it made it possible for the internet to become more widespread. And that is when really growth began in an exponential manner. So way down, there was a decision to set up an ISP association in somewhere in 1999 or so. Yeah, Dorothy, I think the first time to put it in your yeah, of course. But then, of course, there were other issues about VoIP in those days. The telcos, one of their critical resources was from international calls. And so when people began to use internet for VoIP, it became a challenge. Some people were, and so forth, and so on. There were issues of interconnections and other things. And of course, in spite of the coming to kill here, we managed to survive. And we continue to grow in that, busy internet. Yeah, so that's it. So in 1996, the Ghana environment began a privatization of the network. So there was, I think, Telecom Malaysia came in and took 30% shares of Ghana Telecom. And then the NCA was created to regulate. Definitely, it used to be a monopoly. So once there was competition, then needed to have somebody to make sure that it's regulated. The second operator was licensed. And then downstream, we had the mobile. Of course, Mobitel started a bit early before the regulator, but the others also came on board. Because now there was a regulator to regulate these things. And so the privatization helped in actually growing the subscription until the telcos took over, and now it's like that 70% of people in Ghana have access and so forth. One of the things NCS did to ensure that people can manage the networks, Alain said in 2001, is it 2000? 2000, Cape Town. That's when AFNOG had the first meeting. And then through that meeting, we started a couple of, there were some trainings by Internet Society, because a lot of the people who were with us had actually gone to the Internet Society development countries capacity building, and they needed to train people in Ghana. So there were a number of trainings that we did between 96 and 2000 just to train more engineers to be able to manage the networks. And that was when Garnet was, we'll talk about the formation of Garnet and the GH-NOC, because that was a derivative from AFNOG. There was an E0 program which required that countries will start their own NOCs, and we did that by 2009. We started our own NOC in Ghana. All right, so there are a lot of other key projects that NCS as a technology company did. So we had the company that set up the first SWIFT interbank network between 1993 and 1996. NCS also set up satellite networks for Ashanti Gold Corporation, Ghana Commercial, and other, but these were the significant ones that we set up. We started experimenting towards the end of the decade, an e-commerce model and cash, which we call the e-Sika, and using AccuShop to develop our e-commerce and so forth. And of course, Alain has already talked about AFNO 2001 and ICANN 2003. Okay. So quickly, in 2003, there were issues around, issue around lands, and resulted in the shutdown of NCS, and all the staff and everybody had to go. And through that, NCS reinvented itself as Ghana.com. And so just so that we know the history and so forth. Now, just in concluding, I think all these things have been made possible through people. NI has been honored across the globe. ICANN, the first board member, inducted into the Internet Hall of Fame, won the John Postel Service Award, Ethos Award, and leadership's role in all these institutions that I've already mentioned, but ultimately the father of the Internet. So these are the gallant men that helped Prof to do all this. We're all part, but we came in as latter-day saints, you know. But we have William Tevi, who is the first IP engineer, Andrew Ayite-Bule, Charles Edwasa, Godfrey. And then for the engineering team, we had Joseph Annan. We call him Amas, Mike Baidu, and David Kumi. So this is just a snippet of the history. Hopefully, once the book comes, we will all be able to have access. These are some of the policy recognitions. Honorable Pepra being one of the people who significantly supported this. And then Honorable Edward Salia, the president, the current president. He used to be the deputy minister and then minister. And Isaiah, who recently passed. So this is the history. And this is just a timeline from when it started and where we were in 2020. On that note, I'd like to thank you all for your time. Sorry for being... oh, yeah. Oh,